This video is a sample from the Secret Guitar Teacher Interactive course, The 5 Main Elements of Music. The 5 main elements of music. Element number 2, scales. Section 2.1, Learning the Minor Blues Scales. Part 3, Learning Scales, the 2 pathways. Traditionally, there are 2 different pathways that students of the guitar are likely to follow when starting to learn scales. Most start with what I refer to as the graphical pathway. The graphical pathway is where scales are simply learned as a series of patterns, and you need no understanding of the names of the notes nor of how they relate to one another. Scale patterns are memorised and then drilled until they can be played subconsciously. That means I can be playing away through this set of patterns with very little attention to what's going on with my left hand, and maybe chat to you about what I had for breakfast this morning or where I went on holiday last summer, except I didn't go on holiday last summer because of COVID. But you get the idea. We've memorised these patterns to the point where they require very little input, very little conscious input as I'm playing them. You're then encouraged to use these patterns to improvise along to blues backing tracks. By this process, you intuitively develop phrasing skills without needing to know any of the detail about how or why the notes you're playing match up with the underlying chords. It's all done by ear. So normally the first type of scales encountered on this pathway are the blues scales or the pentatonic scales. And these scales give you immediate access into blues-based improvised guitar. But they can also very easily be adapted to rock guitar, and country guitar. As many of the great guitar solos we hear on records are based on these types of scales, following this pathway is also likely to help you learn a few classic guitar solos note for note. This is a great way to help you develop your style and technique. But then, to help you develop your playing further and broaden the scope of both your lead and rhythm guitar beyond all limitations, a more structural approach to learning scales is recommended. I call this the analytical pathway. This is where scales are taught in a systematic way that relies on a higher level of understanding and some awareness of note names and scale relationships. Rather than simply learning patterns, you are first encouraged to understand how scales are formed by a closer look at music theory. You are then taught a highly efficient orientation system based on the caged system of octave patterns, so that you can find all the scales you ever need on the fretboard in the most efficient way. I think it important to stress that the two pathways complement each other. The graphical pathway helps get you off to a satisfyingly quick start and is a great way to develop your technique and your intuitive ability to play guitar by ear. You could argue that this pathway favours right-brained students. The analytical pathway, it could be argued, favours those more inclined to use the left side of their brain. This pathway is a little less immediately accessible, but for those prepared to work through the preparatory stages, it is extremely powerful in its application. The result of following this path is nothing less than the ability to create any chord, scale, arpeggio or mode in any key and in any position. It is the foundation of total fretboard mastery. On this course, we will be helping you along both these pathways. At any one time, you may find yourself favouring one or the other. That is only natural. But I encourage you to make whatever progress you can along both paths in order to reach your full potential as a guitar player. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you'd really like to maximise your potential as a guitar player, click on the link in the description below to the Secret Guitar Teacher site. Here you can sign up for a 30-day trial free of charge and without obligation. We won't even ask you for your credit card number.